Alright, so what I want to do is that I want to just do like an overview of what you're going to encounter in this first anatomy, in the final practicum. I'm just going to do an overview of a couple things here. Just do the brain here, go over some parts of the brain. Some of the charts I have here, like some nerves, and then eventually you have the eye and ear. So what I'll do is that I'll just kind of just do these in parts, just so you can have an overview of what you're going to encounter. And eventually what you want to do is look at the individual videos I have so you can be able to go more in depth. Okay, so this is our brain, all right? Okay, from the top view, here you see the brain cross-section, mid-sagittal view. Here you see it underneath. Okay, and I guess we can jump to this one. Here you see the brain, medial section. Okay, so let's point out some things that we can see on these charts here. First of all, here's the back part of the brain here. This is the front part. This is going to be the post-central gyrus and the pre-central gyrus. Here you see some arachnoid mater. It kind of looks like some kind of webbing here. These little fibers. Okay, and I believe right here we see some arachnoid granulations. Okay. And all these little bumps here, they're called gyri. The depressions are called sulcus. The deep depression is called a fissure, which is a longitudinal fissure. Separates the brain from left and right halves. Here you see the medulla oblongata. Okay. Here you see some nerves that come out of the brain. Here you see some optic nerves, olfactory nerves up here. Guess what we can say is this is the gray matter in here. Gray matter, white matter is on the outside. All right, see what we can see here on this one. Here you can see the ventricles, lateral ventricles, third ventricle, fourth ventricle. Okay. Pre-central gyrus, post-central gyrus for motor and sensory respectively. Okay, down here we see the two different colors inside the brain. Here we see the gray matter, which contains mainly cell bodies, which he developed over millions of years to make us so intelligent. And here we have the white matter, which contains axons that allow signals to go from the gray matter down the spinal cord. Okay, and here you can see the cerebellum for learned motor movements, like playing the piano or riding a bike. Okay, here we can see some structures that are medial. Here we can see the corpus callosum. Here we see the septum pellucidum, and here we see the fornix. Here we also see the diencephalon with the intermediate mass in the middle. In the diencephalon, we have the hypothalamus, the thalamus, and the epithalamus with the pineal gland. Here we see the pons, cerebropeduncle. Here we see the cerebellum with the arbor vitae. And here we see the medulla oblongata, which is, I believe, that's what we saw up here. Medulla oblongata. And then we have the spinal cord. Okay. Here we can see the lateral ventricles. The third ventricle. And that down here must be the fourth ventricle. Okay. What else can we see down here? Just white matter and gray matter. The white matter and gray matter. This one, we can see some nerves. Here we see cranial nerve number 1. Here's number 2, factory and optic. Number 3, oculomotor. 4, trochlear. I don't see 4 here. 5, trigeminal. 6, abducens. 7, facial. 8, vestibulocochlear. 9, glossopharyngeal. 10, vagus. 11 is accessory. And 12 is hypoglossal. So those are your 12 cranial nerves, which you're going to learn on the brain later on. All right, so let's go ahead and look up here, see if things we can point out that we couldn't. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything, but here's the brain, cerebrum, cerebellum with the arbor vitae. Here's the corpus callosum, the septum pellucidum, the fornix. Here we have the hypothalamus, the thalamus, and the epithalamus. Here's the pituitary gland sitting in the sella turcica, or the sphenoid bone. Here's the pons, cerebropeduncle. Here you also have the corpora quadrigemina, made up of the 2 superior colliculi and 2 inferior colliculi. Here we have the pineal gland, which helps you go to sleep, releases melatonin. Intermediate mass, if I didn't mention it. Here we have the medulla oblongata and the spinal cord going down. That's pretty much it for the brain. Okay, so I guess we can leave it at that for now. Next up will be the spinal nerves. All right, guys. Well, the next thing what I'll do is I'll go over the spinal nerves. Just what I'll do is that I'll go over here behind me, right up there. I'll go over the spinal cord here, and going over some of the components of the spinal cord. Then what we can do is just go over some kind of pretty popular spinal nerves that you find throughout the body. So yeah, let's go ahead and start doing that. These charts are pretty far up, so it's kind of hard for me to try to get the exact angle to not make my head go take the whole screen, or you can't see the models back here. But all right, so let me just get started. Okay, so here I'm going to go over the spinal segment right up here. Just follow my laser. Okay, here you see the gray matter, which is like a butterfly-shaped structure, and the white matter that's around it. Okay, so I'm going to go over the spinal cord there. I'm also going to go over some spinal nerves between these two guys here. A little bit tricky to do these spinal nerves because, as you can see, the numbers have been pretty much scratched out. So you may want to make sure with your instructor to see if they're correct. And trying to find those on Google, good luck with that. These charts are pretty old. About as long as I've been here. It's a long time, but all right, so let's just do something. And over here you have autonomic nervous system. You probably won't get into it too much, but I'll mention a couple things. All right, so let's get started with the spinal cord segment here. Okay, so here we have the gray matter, white matter. How do you know what's posterior and anterior? Well, you have a dorsal root ganglion here, so that's the posterior half. So if you divide these into a bottom and the top, this top would be posterior. So everything back here will be posterior, and everything in the front will be, and the bottom half will be anterior. Okay, so all right, so let's go over some things here. Here we have the posterior gray horn, the lateral gray horn, anterior gray horn. The posterior receives the sensory information from the dorsal root, and from there the dorsal root ganglion. And then from there the information will be processed by interneurons, and the information will be converted to motor here at the anterior gray horn, and then out the anterior root. Okay. On this side as well, we have the posterior root ganglion, and the anterior root. Here you have the posterior ramus that goes to the muscles of your back, and the anterior ramus that goes to the limbs and ventrolateral surface. Here you see a sympathetic chain ganglia. Here you see some white rami communicans and gray rami communicans. Okay. Let's look at the meningeal layers. Here you have the pia mater, the arachnoid mater, and the dura mater outside. Okay. I don't think I mentioned the columns, so here you have the posterior white column, the lateral white column, and the anterior white column. The posterior has the posterior median sulcus, which is doesn't go in that far, and the anterior median fissure does go all the way through. Goes up to actually this part here called the central canal, which contains CSF. I think that's pretty much it there for what I can tell you for the cross-section of the spinal cord. So let's go down here to the autonomic nervous system. you really don't get into it as much as we used to here before. So I'll just mention a couple things. I guess the parasympathetic nervous system, you'll see these little black lines here, which gives rise to 3, 7, 9, and 10. But that's the part of the parasympathetic nervous system, or the cranial, and in the sacral division. See these black lines down here? So the cranial sacral division is the parasympathetic nervous system. And the thoracolumbar division, which you can see here in orange versus black, that's the sympathetic nervous system, or the thoracolumbar division. What else can I tell you about this? Here you can see some white and gray rami communicans. This is the sympathetic chain ganglia. It looks like a pearl necklace, bunch of beads on a string. This is a preganglionic neuron to the prevertebral ganglions, here, there, and down here. And then after it's the postganglionic neurons. Okay. Notice that the sympathetic has short preganglionic neurons and long postganglionic neurons, while the parasympathetic has long preganglionic neurons and short postganglionic neurons. All right, so pretty much that's autonomic nervous system, which we cannot control. It's going to go to different parts of the body, like the lungs, the heart, the stomach, the digestive organs, all your digestive organs. Okay, so that autonomic nervous system takes care of it for us. All right, so let's go to the spinal nerves here. The spinal nerves. This is part of the somatic nervous system, which we do have control. So let's look at a couple things here. Here we have the cervical plexus, which is, I believe, C1 through C5 spinal segments. Then we have the brachial plexus, which is C5 to T1. Here we have the lumbar plexus, which I believe is T12 to L4. And from L4 to S4 is the sacral plexus. Hopefully that's not too blurry there, or too bright. Okay, so let's look at some nerves that come out of each one. So the cervical plexus, we're just going to have the phrenic nerve, which goes down to your diaphragm. The brachial plexus, this is a little bit tough. As you can see, let me put it closer. The numbers have been scratched out and even written out in the past, but I will attempt to tell you what I think I know the answers are. Make sure to verify with your teacher, of course. Okay, this one up here is going to be called the axillary nerve. Okay. This one right here, that's going to be called the radial nerve. Okay. Then this one here, there's three of them. The first one here is the ulnar. The next one's the muscocutaneous. And the last one here is the median. Okay. So just go by that. Hopefully that'll help you. Okay. Now let's go down here to the lumbar plexus. Lumbar plexus is in this area. It's going to have the femoral nerve coming off the lumbar plexus. It's the femoral nerve right there. Okay, then we have the sacral plexus, which is right here, which gives rise to the sciatic nerve. Okay. Then the sciatic nerve is going to be branched off into the tibial nerve, which is, tibial nerve right here, and the common peroneal nerve. All right. So those are the major nerves that come off each plexus. Most likely you'll get tested on. If anything, less than what I just mentioned. All right, and finally this last chart. This one is going to be challenging. I do know that this number 19 here is the phrenic nerve. This goes down, let me see if I can lead it to you. Right there, goes down to the diaphragm. Okay, here we have the brachial plexus. Hold on, my little laser pointer, there you go, brachial plexus. Here's the axillary, right there. And then you can do these three here. You can do the ulnar nerve, the median nerve, And then you can do the radial nerve. Radial nerve. Just know that the radial nerve is on the thumb side, ulnar nerve is on the pinky side, the median's in between, and axillary is on the armpit. Musculocutaneous. So just know the muscutaneous nerve just goes to the biceps brachii. It's around this area. All right, so let's go to the lumbar plexus here. Lumbar plexus gives rise to the femoral nerve. Okay. And then finally the sacral plexus down here gives rise to the sciatic nerve.
And the sciatic nerve divides into tibial nerve and peroneal nerve.
And that's pretty much it. Okay, so just know those nerves. Cervical plexus with the phrenic. Brachial with, you can use the Mamura, M-M-U-R-A, median muscocutaneous, ulnar, radial, axillary. Femoral, you can use the lumbar plexus, you can use femoral nerve. And then sacral plexus with the sciatic nerve, which branches off into common peroneal and tibial nerves. Okay, that's pretty much it. Autonomic and the cross-section of the spinal segment. Okay. And that's it for the for what you pretty much encounter for the spinal nerves and the spinal segment. Not too much autonomic. Well, okay, so the last component that you'll face in this the final practicum, or this last test on the first anatomy, will be the eye and the ear. So that's going to be this chart right here. Okay, in the top part you see the eye, and the bottom part you see the ear. Okay, eye and ear. So we'll go over each one of those briefly. All right, so we'll go over the eye and the ear on this chart. We'll go over the eye and ear. So we'll go over the eye, which is the top half, and then we'll go over the ear. We'll do them all in this one video here. Okay, so let's start up here. Here's the lacrimal gland that secretes tears. It goes across your eyes. Okay, and it's going to go down this superior and inferior lacrimal ducts into the nasolacrimal sac to the nasolacrimal duct. Okay. So that's how we get our eyes cleaned. Here we can see our pupil, the black in the eye here, and the color of your eyes, the iris. Here you see the sclera. Okay, here you see your eyelids with the eyelashes, which help protect your eye. Okay, let's look at the cross section here. Here you see the posterior cavity, the anterior cavity. Here you see the lens. The posterior cavity has the vitreous humor, and the anterior cavity has the aqueous humor. Here you see the lens. Okay. Here you see the suspensory ligaments going around. That holds onto the lens. Okay. Here you see some muscles that move your eyes. Here's the superior rectus eye muscle, the inferior rectus eye muscle, the inferior oblique. I think this is the medial rectus eye muscle. And this is the lateral rectus eye muscle, while this is the levator palpebrae, which elevates your eyelid. Okay. Here you see the layers of your eye. Here's the fibrous tunic, which is the sclera, the vascular tunic, which is the choroid, and then neural tunic. Okay. Here you see in the neural tunic, the fovea centralis in the center, and the macula ludi on the outside. Here's the optic disc. And finally here you can see how the light rays are able to go to the eyes. Here.
When light hits the right eye, half of it is processed on one side of the brain, the other half on the other side of the brain. And the left eye, the same thing.
And it crosses here at the optic chiasm. These are the optic nerves and the optic tracts. And lateral geniculate nucleus. Okay, so that's pretty much an overview of the eye. Let's go down to the ear. All right, so sound waves are going to be picked up here by the auricle or pinna. It's going to go to the external auditory canal, hit the tympanic membrane, vibrate these tiny bones called ossicles. You can see the ossicles in a much larger scale. Here the sound waves come in, hit the tympanic membrane or your eardrum, vibrates the ossicles. Okay. So there's the ossicles, and then from the ossicles, the vibration will cause a sound inside the inner ear, which is made up of the cochlear, the vestibule, and the semicircular canals. And here you see the
vestibulocochlear nerve.
Here you see the eustachian tube, which balances the pressure from inside your body to out. Okay, here's a cool little picture of how big the ossicles are and how big the inner ear is. Malleus, incus, stapes, and inner ear. And then finally here, sound waves come into the, hit the tympanic membrane, vibrate the ossicles, goes inside the ear to the cochlear, and that sound wave is taken up to the cochlear nerve. So eventually to your brain, so you can, in the auditory cortex, so you can interpret the sound. Okay, so that's it pretty much for the ear and the eye. All right, so that's just a quick overview of the final practicum of the first anatomy. Okay, we went over the brain, a couple parts of the brain there. Again, you want to look at the videos to go more in detail, the other videos I have of the brain. But just an overview so you can know what you're up against. Here we have spinal nerves. A little bit tough to try to point out these spinal nerves here on this chart. But at least we got to be able to see the
cross-section of the spinal cord segment up here.
That's definitely important. You should know the components of the spinal cord. Okay, and the meninges that surround it. And then finally here we have the eye and ear, which is your special senses, which picks up those sights and sounds, so we can be able to take it to the brain and interpret the stimuli around us. All right, okay, everybody. So that's pretty much it for the first practicum. An overview. Okay, you want to look at the videos that go more in detail to each one, but at least this will get you started and know what you're up against. Okay, well, good luck. I'll see you on the anatomy lab. Take care, bye.